And we're live. How you going? Phil Tarrant, Property Buzz, Friday morning. The Friday before budget. It's all happening next week. Ask me if I'm excited about the budget. I'll probably say no. However, it's going to be an intense week trying to work out what's going on. Heading down to Canberra early in the week, and I'm going to be sort of reporting from there. So expect to see lots going on and lots of discussions and whatnot over that period of time. We'll chat a little bit about that today, amongst what else is going on in property, what we've seen over the week that has passed with my colleague, the managing editor of real estate over at Mentor Media, Liam Garman. How you going, Liam?
Phil, I've got a flu.
Oh, really?
I've got a flu.
Is it the man flu?
It's the man flu. It's been terrible. Bedridden for days.
Really? I saw you were sick a couple of times this week.
Once, Phil. One afternoon, and I was working from home. I just couldn't fully commit to the team. But I also think it's just because
It's like the budget. It's like the economy. It's sick.
Well, I think it's because I'm sick of all the talking heads.
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm sick of all the talking heads. And Phil,
like
I'd like to take a moment to give a shout out to someone who I actually think is doing an amazing job. And this might not endear me to many people. I think this actually might annoy a few people. Hey, shout out to the Reserve Bank governor.
Oh, okay.
Because having the guts to stand up, Michelle Bullock, having the guts to stand up and say, oh, it's kind of out of my hands. I have to increase interest rates. And it's one of those very hard things to actually explain the economics to people, especially when you got the Treasurer coming out. And the Treasurer's coming out saying, oh, it's because a few months ago before the war in Iran, it's because the economy is so strong. Hey, Australians, you might have less money in your back pocket, but don't look at that. The economy is so strong. That's why we have to raise interest rates, because too many people, we're consuming too much. We're buying too much. And the governor comes out and correctly says, yeah, there is a lot of demand. Why is there so much demand? Because we've increased the number of APS jobs by 25% in a few years. And one of the things that you and I keep talking about, Phil, as well, which is demand for tradespeople. We're building so much, and building's a good thing. We want to build more amenities. We want more metro lines in Sydney. We want more highways, but that comes out of a very small pool of trades and tradespeople, which means it costs more to build houses. And if you're a tradie and you're like, well, I can get guaranteed good government work, or I can take the risk of starting my own business, you're probably going to take the guaranteed government work. Michelle Bullock stood there and she explained that this all makes it way worse, and she had no other choice but to do it. And I thought, going toe-to-toe with the Prime Minister and the Treasurer at a time when she's copping a lot of flack from the media, I respect it.
I got a lot of time for her, and we can talk about interest rates quickly. What I did do, though, is for everyone out there, remember you can put your comments in wherever you tune into this. We're streaming across a whole bunch of different channels, but I jumped onto the YouTube channel for Smart Property Investment, and the first thing I saw was an advert from Pepper, and then Ben & Jerry's ice cream. So for some reason, there's a lot of traffic coming in on this now, and a lot of views coming into it. So obviously Pepper sees it. I said that this is supposed to not have any advertising around it, but looks like YouTube serving ads around it because it's getting so much traffic. So, but it's unashamed and biased. We'll have a go at anything at it, but we're not going to forever be. If you're tuning into this on podcast on a Saturday morning as you head out, look for properties, etc. Go to Property Buzz. You need to listen to this on Property Buzz. We're going to just syndicate it for a little while on Smart Property Investment and the other channels, but we're going to pull it in just solely Property Buzz in time. So for all of you, go and tune in to this on Property Buzz. Follow Property Buzz on all the social media channels. Download it, like it, pin it on whatever podcast app you tune into. That way you can make sure you get every single version of it on Friday mornings, and we'll do some special episodes as well. So watch your space. I'll be in touch. We'll probably pull apart the budget at some point as well. So we will do that on Property Buzz rather than wait until next Friday. I'd like to do it beforehand because I'm going to be on the ground working out what's going on, trying to understand it, and everyone's going to be scratching their head, being curious and inquisitive around what it all means. So there's going to be a lot to unpack. But yes, Liam, interest rates went up on Tuesday, and Michelle Bullock, the RBA governor, in her notes and in the remarks subsequent to it when they do a press conference, pretty much talking about giving the economy space to work its way out, unsure about what the ongoing conflict in the Middle East means for inflation. The indicators are that inflation will continue to rise up until the mid-4s, I believe, and will stay there for some time. And I think the projections are will start to normalise by mid to late 2027. This is what we've been told. Back into the target band between 2 and 3% is where it aims. Now, these are just forecasts and sentiments, and that all sounds good right now. But as you can see, and as we have experienced over the last period of time, how quickly things can change based on geopolitics, and we spoke about it. We went at length around it. That real estate markets in Australia sits downstream of geopolitics, and we see how quickly things can be extrapolated out by conflict, quite a far way away, how that has significant ramifications here. So those inflation numbers, expect them to be high into the future. Don't expect the price of interconnected goods and services to come down as we get some sort of resolution to the situation in the Gulf. Food prices will remain high. Certain building materials will remain high, and there'll be consequences to that, including increase in costs at the Bowser, at the grocery store, at the building supplies place. So still yet to be played out. We don't know what the Treasurer's going to hand down to show any relief around that come Tuesday. The market is now predicting another rate rise in September. Whether or not that take place, who knows? But the big thing is, and I only saw today when I was waiting for the lift to come up to our floor here, splashed across one of those screens that you see in a corporate thing about all the distress now around these 5% deposit schemes, right? So it's on, it's on. But there we are.
If only there were two podcast hosts, a humble tech salesman and a humble journalist that were saying, and I know I sound like a broken record, but you and I remember the direct quote, and I've got to dig it up somewhere. We are like one Middle East crisis away from. We said it. I mean, it's not like a Middle East crisis is a rare thing. You would have lived through a few. I've lived through a few. I think this is probably my 5th Middle East crisis, I would say. 6th maybe. They're quite...
One thing you're guaranteed is... Middle East crisis is in different, like, to be fair, the most recent Middle East crisis has been more significant than previous Middle East crises. Now, you think about Middle East crises, they can come in many shapes and sizes, and we've seen litany of them ever since the birth of the modern Middle East, and we'll call that subsequent to 1917 and the Sykes-Picot arrangement, which carved up parts of the Middle East post World War One. They come in all different shapes and sizes, and a lot of people would say there is a crisis with the conflict in Gaza for the last number of years, and you're seeing that playing out right now in terms of the findings and the investigation taking place right now in the Royal Commission into anti-Semitism in Australia. Right, this is all consequences of that specific conflict, which has been manifested and certainly brought to the fore. So that is one crisis that has implications and effects for people here in Australia, more limited to a different sort of crisis, which is them closing the Strait of Hormuz and America blocking Iranian ports and Iranians not letting ships through. And that has a more wide-reaching, I'm not saying a more important, but I'm saying a more wide-reaching impact in relation to the wider economy, which the other crisis less so. So there's only another Middle East crisis which will disrupt global supply chains, and it may not even be in the Middle East. We see the war in Ukraine, which has now been going for, it's 4 years, would it be?
2022, yeah.
2022,
4 years.
4 years. And that initially had supply chain constraint problems, fertilizer, it's the breadbasket of Europe, so a lot of food disruption. Then we saw a lot of the issues in relation to fuel security coming out of that because of... So there is always a significance of geopolitical aspects of what's taken place right around the world, and these things will continue, and Australia all sits downstream from this stuff. And here we are, another interest rate rise as a result of some of those things. Let's be clear, this interest rate rise is not a result solely of the conflict in the Middle East. All of these issues facing Australia in relation to inflation were there prior to that. And yes, some of them are being remediated and resolved, but they were still there, and inflation was sticky. And be careful how the inflation story is sold to you, Mr. and Mrs. Australian, because the government will have you believe that it's all manifested because of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. It's part of it, but there's other inherent issues related to it. So you're going to see all this play out. The spin doctors are getting ready in Canberra to sell the budget.
Yep.
I'm told, and I've been reading just this week that, and everyone would have seen this across their social media feeds, and depending on what your algorithm picks up, there's a certain cohort of social media practitioners and participants who are showing all the shorts and the clips of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and the Treasurer Chalmers saying, we will never touch property taxes. No, we're not going to do this. We're not going to. We're not doing this. And like, there's just not once or twice. There's go and find how many there was.
And one of them, he got really angry. He was like, I've addressed this 50 times. Like,
so we're not going to do anything. No. Well, yes, they are.
Yeah.
So now the rhetoric is, people saying, well, have we lost trust in the government, and what is the integrity of the government? And the response is, no, we will continue to build trust by explaining these changes, by justifying these changes. And I was looking at this just the other day. I think there's about, and I know I get stats 90% wrong 90% of the time. So stay with me.
90% of stats are made up.
No, 90% of stats are. But I think the numbers like property taxes, CGT, and negative gearing accounts for about 20 billion. In 20 billion is sort of tax offsets a year, right? 4 billion of that is contributions to negative gearing. 4 billion, which sounds like a big number, but compared to other spending things,
that's less than the amount of fraud the government admitted to for the NDIS. I think the government sanctioned NDIS fraud figures about 6 billion with a B a year. So it's less than the fraud they know that already goes on. Yeah,
and people are probably sick of me talking about this now, but my other favourite stat at the moment is, and this is the last time I'll use it if people get a bit fatigued by it. Illegal tobacco sales costs the Australian Taxation Department $12 billion a year.
I don't think I've heard you say that one before.
No, it's a recent one. I saw it on the telly the other day.
You might have been saying it on a few SPI shows that I haven't been in.
So that's three times. So 3 times the provision of negative gearing tax receipts to property investors.
It's just from the tobacco.
Is from illegal tobacco sales. 60% of all tobacco sales in Australia now is illegal.
Yeah.
So, and I sit there and just go, just why don't you just fix a third of that problem?
Yeah.
And then you sit there and you have a think about it and you go, well, so it's costing the Australian government, Australian taxpayers and I'm not going to talk about the positive tax receipts that property investors provide. Let's just put that aside. So it's costing the Australian government, Australian taxpayer, $4 billion a year in sort of taxation returns to property investors to provide housing to a third of Australians.
Yep.
Flip that on its head. So I think 96% of all investment properties in Australia, or rental properties in Australia, is provided by non-Australian government or government-based sources. So, there's Housing Commission, all that sort of stuff, right? So imagine if the Australian government had to stump the bill for everything else. It would be trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, but it cost $4 billion. So this whole idea of like putting all of this attention, like you think about how caught up Australia is at the moment. Everyone talks about it, right? Like it's crazy. Like it's a universe. How have they made a $4 billion, item on the tax budget a divisive factor that has splitting Australia apart about the haves and the have-nots? I think that's pretty unfair, and I think that's pretty unreasonable, just for the purpose of trying to buy votes with people who may not be that informed.
So, and this is
just saying,
the government's kind of failed the behavioural economic side of it, right? Which is, and I think it's very reasonable to say this isn't speculation. This isn't speculation. Now, a lot of people are moving away from, smoking, the health benefits, That's all known, right? But where the
No, they're not, man. They're sucking back lung buses like you wouldn't believe still.
Well,
they're just 60% of them they're getting
No,
from...
but I mean, my point, fewer people smoking for that reason.
Maybe.
But the behavioural economics comes in, which is once you hit that point on the curve, you're going to seek an alternative. If you're not interested in quitting, you'll seek an alternative, which is the illegal purchase of illegal tobacco. Because,
But by the way, like, if I smoked and I don't and never have done, I'd be buying my smokes illegally.
Well,
if you get it for 25% of the
you
price.
walk through and you can see the rubbish everywhere, right? You can see the Manchesters and you see them everywhere.
Yeah,
but
proper smokes.
that's because you've created a disincentive for people to follow the law, and you've created an incentive for people to break the law. It's a push and pull factor, and that's where the behavioural economics comes in, which is the exact same in terms of property economics, because. And this is where you and I have been harping on, and again, something that a lot of our listeners are probably tired of, but you're now creating a disincentive to sell.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to just take this as an opportunity to jump into my hot take of the week.
Sorry, that's my beef.
That was your beef. Okay, perfect.
That is my beef for the week.
Good. Okay.
My beef for the week is why has a $4 billion budgetary consideration? Let's remember that the government gave $16 billion to pay down the HEX debts of young Australians, right? And this whole idea of generational equality and stuff, which, in principle I subscribe to. I think it's cool. Everyone should have a chance, right? $16 billion over here, no worries, nothing said, just write it off, there you go, no worries. Got $4 billion over here, it's dividing Australia.
Yeah.
It's dividing Australia.
Yeah.
Beef of the week.
So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to roll straight onto the hot take of the week,
Yes,
because
sir.
we're talking about the incentive and disincentive, right? And again, this is something you and I have spoken about at length, so we don't need to go back into it. But once you've fractured that trust that a taxpayer has with their government, we know that 50%, at least 50% of supply, and and that's just what we know. There are whole hosts of projects at the moment which are investor only. Now we've broken that trust between taxpayer and government. It's very fair to say that a lot of investors will be thinking twice before putting their money on the line for new supply. But my hot take of the week is that, and I've put this down into words just so I don't mix myself, but we're days outside of the federal budget. And for months now, we've been hearing the narrative, and it's been consistent, that tax changes are coming, whether it's CGT or negative gearing. They're in the firing line. And you would have expected by now, given that it's only a few days away, that investors should have headed for the exits. And here's the reality. If there was going to be a mass exodus, we would have already seen it. And why? Because we've already seen the hints that they're not necessarily going to grandfather. They've already started tinkering with it. Whether they're waiting for people to see the wind change, that's fine. But they've already suggested it through very tactical leaks. Some leaks have said via the CBA that there may be no negative gearing at all. Some are saying it's 2. Some are saying that there'll be grandfathering. Some are saying there's not. If there was going to be a mass exodus, people would have already done it to get the first mover advantage of selling first, to realise the full discount, and to just nip it in the bud while property prices are high. That window has come and gone. You're not going to list your property and sell it between now and 3 or 4 or 5 days' time when the budget is. So what that tells you is pretty simple. Phil, it's as you and I have been predicting, that 99% of Australian investors aren't here for the quick trade. They're here for the long term.
Yeah.
And look, the data is messy, but the data is messy. Some data has said that listings are actually 3.3% lower now than this time last year. So what does that mean? That the notional fire sale never happened. Actually, there's fewer people selling now. Why are fewer people selling now? Maybe it's because they want to wait it out. Maybe they want to wait for the good old times again.
Maybe.
Some are saying that it's marginally up 6 months ago, but let's average it out. It's more or less the same. So the bigger question is, are those that are selling, are they primarily just driven by interest rates? And that's a very fair thing. If you weren't factoring in 3 rate rises, maybe you've over-leveraged yourself, maybe you stripped too much equity, maybe you let yourself too thin, maybe you're taking time off for a job, maybe you're being made redundant. There's a lot of reasons. Those are the people that are selling, but they're 2 very different stories. Those investors that were here for the long haul are staying for the long haul, and there is maybe a very small exodus. So what does that mean, Phil? Australia's holding the line. Australia is holding the line, and as population growth remains strong and supply just falls off a cliff over the next 12 months, it's only going to tighten further. And here is where the kicker comes in, Phil. We're the only country in the world that's actually raising interest rates. Our interest rates are about 2% higher than some of our colleagues across ANZUS and the Five Eyes countries, if we're going to take it geopolitically. But Canada, UK, New Zealand, the United States, we're about 2% higher than some of them. So quite substantially.
And people are sort of questioning that, right?
People are questioning it, but what that means is we are a bit of an anomaly. And what that means is once we sail on the other side of it, unlike those economies, which are already quite low, once we've sailed on the other side of those economic headwinds, I think it's very reasonable to say that there will be rate cuts. Now, this isn't where we were a year ago, where everyone was predicting that there would be rate cuts on the horizon that never eventuated. This would be quite real because Chalmers has already flagged that he would be looking to make quite wide-ranging cuts to the Australian public service. We've seen a number of public servants being offered voluntary redundancies, so they can leave if they want to. We've already seen that that Treasurer Chalmers has flagged several $1 billion of cuts to the NDIS. So the government will likely be doing its part in reducing that aggregate demand by playing the fiscal card and actually implementing cuts.
Yeah.
I think it's very fair to say that once we're on the other side of the Iran crisis, that inflation in Australia will actually be quite manageable and actually relative to our partners in quite a good spot, unlike the UK, which is both low interest rates and no inkling of government cuts. What does that mean, Phil? I think for those who hold the firing line and hold their nerve through this uncertainty, there will be some pretty substantial cuts in the future. And I think if you wait out the other side of this, that the Australian property market will grow like it's never gone before.
Maybe. You go through all this sort of the history of property and crises and how it bounce backs and all that sort of stuff, right? The issue you have this time around is maybe the sort of overt implementation or integration of significant taxation regime changes or reforms may make a difference this time. And I can't see. I think we're going to move into a period of subdued growth comparative to years prior. We've spoken about that beforehand. This sort of notion of stagflation, which it sounds like a fancy economic term. It's pretty much you got high inflation without a lot of inherent growth in the economy, right? And the concern I have is in relation to that, and it's not around the inflationary side. I think that's going to be conducive to the machinations and things we've spoken about. It's around the sort of anemic economic growth that Australia sees itself within now, and the overt and unnecessary implementation of further restrictions that is really going to undermine aspiration.
Yeah.
And undermining aspiration in Australians to invest in the future through maybe personal wealth creation vehicles, like property investment being one of them. And importantly, the sort of attack on aspiration for people to take risk in their professional lives. Running a business is difficult, and you only need to look at the stats. And again, I'm probably going to butcher these, but you call it, I don't know, maybe 2.3 million. It is 2.3 million, 2.5 million businesses in Australia, right? And of them, maybe, I don't know, I can't know the most recent numbers, maybe 3,500 or 4,000 of those businesses are large businesses.
Yep.
That means they've got over 200 people. 200 people, right? That's a large business, 3,500, 4,000. There's about 50 or 60,000 medium-sized businesses, like between maybe 10 and 200.
It's not many when you think about it.
No. The rest are small. They're small businesses.
Yeah.
They're businesses with 1, 2, 3, 4 staff members, right? This is the engine room of the Australian economy, the SME sector, right? I think it employs 70%, something like that, right, of all Australians, right? So not everyone is employed by these big businesses listed on the ASX with huge balance sheets and ability. Like most Australians derive their income. Well, 50 of those Australians that don't derive the majority of their income from government.
Yes,
right, which is more than 50%. The other 50%. most of them derive their income from SME businesses, right? And SME businesses are the people who are taking risks, building business, taking on debt from the banks, right, and other financial institutions, investing in their future to turn a profit, right, that gets taxed, right? Those taxation receipts fuel government, all the budget stuff, right? It's the SME sector which paying for this, and the better the SME sector is, big business as well, the better the SME sector is, means that they can hire more people. And if SMEs are hiring people, guess what happens? The government gets more money because they pay tax, anywhere up to 47%, whatever the taxation rate is, right? We're in an environment now where people are being disincentivized to invest in business.
Yeah.
Because of all the rules, restrictions, taxations, everything on the way. It's bloody hard graft. And the current government, my view, pays little or no consideration to the actual cohort of people who are fueling the dough that goes into the government coffers for them to pay for everything. So this is the aspirational issue we have, and this is stagflation.
Yeah.
Inflation, like you're putting more money into the market, $16 billion, $5,500 essentially on average per person. They gave to write off HEX debts. That's HEX debts are not getting written off. That means there's more money in the system, right? Put money in the system through other incentives, fuel rebates, all this sort of stuff. More money, inflation. But we're not actually looking at the inherent drivers, which is going to support GDP growth, and that is fueling the people who are taking risk.
The people are having a go.
And I'll tell you what, SME business owners are typically the people who are not going to be relying on a government pension, who are investing in property, who are taking control of their financial future, being responsible and accountable for it, and they're getting hit on both sides, in business and personally. And this is supposed to be an egalitarian country where everyone is treated the same. Everyone gets one vote, right?
Yeah.
But there seems to be a huge amount of focus on a certain cohort of Australians who are being unfairly targeted to provide more than maybe is not necessary. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't pay tax. I think it's a great thing that you live in a democratic country like Australia in order to do that. But if the government ain't spending it right, I'll tell you what, you're deflating the aspirational aspects that's always made Australia great. And I'm talking about our migrants as well who come here. A lot of them, mate, they go out and they get stuck in and they create businesses. They have this realisation going, mate, the taxation regime. And when you think about it, our per capita government staff versus, the rest of the population, it's the highest in the world, one of the highest in the world.
It's appalling.
So it's way out of kilter. Way out of kilter. And I only saw this week, Costello, who was treasurer for well over a decade, talking about, the spending regime, the debt regime of the Victorian government, right? And the inherent impact on businesses down there. So this is the budget on Tuesday is really, and this is my point, it might not be as rosy, the rebound after a crisis this time around. Because of the inherent structure of how the government has things framed from a mindset, from a bureaucratic point of view, from a red tape point of view. And it just gets so hard that people just go, stuff it, I'm done. Maybe that's what the government want. They'd rather people being more reliant on the government because then,
And this is where I do applaud, just to go back to where we started, the Reserve Bank governor, because she did call this out. Not as pointed as you did. No. Obviously, she has to be more nuanced.
She's paid for by the Australian taxpayer. She's got to be a lot more considerate.
She has to be a bit more nuanced. But she did go toe-to-toe as far as I'm concerned. Look, obviously, you and I don't have a crystal ball. We never will.
No.
Right. But there are a few things. I still back what I said before, which is if a fire sale were to happen, it would have happened. There will be a windfall at some point. And given that, apart from very few markets, very, very few markets.
Some markets are hurting, though. The prestige markets are starting to hurt.
Prestige markets are hurting.
They're starting to hurt.
That lower 1-2 quartile.
But still underpinned by government spending.
Yeah.
Okay, think about this. You talk about inflation, right?
Yeah.
So the money that first-home buyers traditionally have saved, right, in order to
don't need
enter
to
the
do that
property
anymore,
market,
Phil.
20%.
Yeah.
They don't need to do it anymore. So this stimulus, right?
Yeah.
That means, you know, the Australians have typically been quite austere, like
Yes.
up until recently. You know,
Yep.
Depression, World War One. You know, Depression, World War Two. You know, coming out of the back of that, it's pretty humdrum and pretty considered. You know, people didn't need a lot and they didn't want a lot. They were a lot more
Yeah.
considered. Now it's very, very different, right? All of these money that should be sitting in savings, waiting for and I do note that it's a lot more expensive today to buy a property than what it was previously, based on income, right? Like, you know,
Hey, can I jump in
that aside.
one second
Yeah.
with a stat on that?
Yeah,
It's funny that the Labor government, what they're going to do, obviously, is with to your point before about continuously denying that they would do it. No, we'll ruled it out.
Yeah.
And they will say, this is where I'm going to happily pull out a crystal ball. They will say something, you know, of course, they'll talk about the intergenerational equity, but they'll say this is the first time that we've been in such an acute crisis like this that we've been forced to. We've been compelled to turn our back on that promise because the crisis is so bad. And then maybe it is. You know, maybe it is. Yeah, if you're in well, Brisbane's probably a fantastic example. Brisbane, because they've had no new supply of a unit market, an entry-level market. Relative to Sydney, Brisbane's more expensive for first-home buyers than Sydney is, because at least in Sydney you can go to not even far outside the inner west of Sydney. You can go to Auburn, places like that, and get a two-bedroom unit for $400,000 to $500,000, right? And you can live in that for several years. You can keep that for an investment property. There are still pathways. Brisbane has remarkably fewer pathways because they just had one or two rungs of the ladder that were missing, which you did have in Sydney. But they will say that their hand's been forced because the crisis is so bad. But I think that we're missing an element of the irony here, which is for everyone that goes back and attacks Howard and Costello for simplifying the tax regime, or coalition voters for voting against Bill Shorten when he wanted to bring this in. National property prices have increased 68% since 2022. So they've increased by over half since 2022, which is when Labor came in. So I think it's very reasonable to say, and I'm not making this political, but I think there also has to be a bit of an argument when we're talking about inflation, how much of the increase to the housing cost has also been a genesis of government spending. How much of it has been as a genesis of demand-side inflation with 5% deposit schemes? How much of it has been with the misequilibrium of supply and demand, which we've spoken about a lot? If it's increased by 68% in the past 4 years,
yeah,
how much of it is of the Labor Party's own making?
Let's call it out what this is, right? You've worked in and around politics. You know the game. This crisis that we have today is a crisis on supply. But the government and the smart people in the government have created this concept, this wrapper of generational inequality, generational equity. So they've sat there and gone, we've got this problem, nothing to see here, let's put a wrapper around it and point the blame, is what they've done, and divide people. Like a government, under no circumstances or situation, should be dividing its people. But this concept, this philosophy that they've introduced and are championing is dividing the nation. It's not about the haves and the have-nots anymore, which is a matter of wealth. It's about young versus old. Young versus old, right? A good government should not be putting a wedge straight down the middle of its people. And that's what the government of today has done. They have a problem, it's called supply. But it's wrapped up in the idea of generational equality. Take ownership for this. Absolutely take ownership for it. Fix the supply problem. Fix the supply problem. And I've given years of recommendations how about to stimulate this, you know. But I'm not in government. I don't get listened to. I don't sit in Treasury. I'm not very smart or intelligent. I'm just a bloke who sort of sees a lot, talks to a lot, pretty pragmatic and practical. There's some solutions there. So stop dividing. I don't care which government it is. Don't divide the nation. But you've made it divisive. You're splitting and separating Australians based on this. And I'm seeing it typically, this notion of the Canberra bubble, right? You know it. These are people in Canberra think the world revolves around Canberra and their lives and how they debate and, philosophize around all the things. It is the center of the earth. It's bloody not, And what I'm seeing now is that one of the biggest reasons why, and this is absolutely connected with this, I'm just sort of thinking out loud here, but stick with me. One of the main reasons, from what I understand, that a lot of people are turning to One Nation is not necessarily because of their policies, right? A lot of people probably find their policies abhorrent. I'm not going to go into that, and their people, not ideal. One of the main reasons most people are flooding to One Nation is because they don't like the system no more. They look at the government, and they look at the opposition, and go, they don't really reflect me. They're not like me. They're lucky. They're the 1%ers. They live in this bubble of, importance. They're different to us. They're whatever. People are voting against the incumbency of the status quo of Australian politics. So they're going to One Nation, which are a bit different because they probably feel a bit like us. Oh, yeah, they're a bit like us. I can relate to that person. He's a bit flawed, doesn't always get it right, probably done it a bit tough. Not a great, this and that. But so they're voting against the incumbency of our political system, and that's hugely dangerous, right? But what we have, though, is a government of the day dividing Australia on class lines, on wealth lines, on social lines, and they'll tell you they're holistic and they're trying to bring Australia together, and this beautiful melting pot of utopic sort of. We're a country of migrants and stuff. That's all sounds great narrative, but they're dividing us economically. And that's going to come home and bite. It's going to bite very, very hard. And I don't know if the coalition has got the skill set and capability to actually connect in now with the Australian populace. I think they're just a bit too disconnected. They just don't know. The political class don't know, man. They don't know. And I know a lot of these pollies. They just... They try their best. They try and do town halls and their intent is great. Not being our policies, but we've lost this. Australians are pretty smart and sharp, right? They can spot it. If they spot it, they'll call it out. And most people now feel like politicians don't generally represent them because they're not like them.
It will. You're right. They will get caught out for it because a few years' time when Gen Zs, and this isn't knocking Gen Zs, I'm just going to use them as an example because this is the voter base that Albo and Chalmers are going after, right? Once Gen Zs and millennials and 24 months comes around and they're like, oh, well, I thought all these changes were going to mean that I could now afford a house. Well, no, maybe the house price stopped growing, but you're not going to immediately walk into a $2 million house. It's just actually not going to happen. There are going to be properties that will, no matter how much you punish or ravage the property market, even look at the UK, Phil. Look at the UK where the house prices have been dipping years on years on years on years and years. And people think, hey, this is a really good thing. But, well, at the end of the day, you're never going to necessarily live in Mayfair. Well, you're never going to necessarily live in Vaucluse. There are going to be properties that are outside of what you can achieve. To your point about it coming to bite them in the bum when supply does drop and rents inevitably increase and we're 24 months down the track and maybe the property market's tinkered a few percent here and there around the edges. Well, I still can't afford to buy. And now supply's dropped off a cliff, so now my rent's gone up as well. I think there will be a reckoning. And to your point about artificially creating this hatred, there are so many positive...
I'm not saying it's hatred. I'm saying division. Division. Yeah.
I think there are so many positive policies that you could do to improve the transaction speed, I don't want to use the word fairness, but efficiency in the property market. Now, I know a lot of property economists have come out with, downsizing. Now, I'm never going to say to someone who's worked their entire life to get a house that you should sell. I would never tell that to anyone, and I think that it's morally abhorrent to force someone to sell a home that was their family home. They saw their children grow up there. I would never say it. But reality does say that when you get older, you don't necessarily want 4 bedrooms. Actually, you don't even want to upkeep it. You don't want to garden a quarter-acre block. It's just you're going to have to pay someone to come in. There's challenges around it. There are a lot of older Australians that are like, I'm actually really happy to go into a duplex. I'm actually really happy to go into not a small apartment, a nice 3-bedroom apartment, but they are happy to take that. One of the big things that's stopping them is, I don't know, probably fair to say the $30,000 to $50,000 of stamp duty that they're going to have to pay when they go into a smaller house, the 2.5% selling cost that they're going to have to say farewell to. Part of the and that's all money that would be going into potential movers.
And I would add to that also, you're absolutely right. And I suggested this years and years and years ago, right? Just for downsizers, just don't charge them to cycle, right? Don't charge them to cycle.
Yep.
But the issue is though, they sit there and they go, say you bought a home 30, 40 years ago, right? And it was a typical, just a normal Australian dwelling. Now it's worth millions of dollars, right? Millions of dollars, right? And it depending on where you are in Australia and the government of the day, your family home is exempt from any consideration around your retirement and whether or not you're receiving a pension or what that pension would look like. There's a huge issue with older Australians when they sit there, if I downsize, right now I can get a pension living in this home that I've had for years, right? If I downsize and I swap up my home and I'm left with a big bunch of cash.
You can't,
That cash from the proceeds of the home is means tested. So you sit there and then therefore there's no pension. So they do the sums and they go, we're better off hanging on with this place, because it's going to get sold at some point. Maybe when they cark it, the kids will get it. And then they have no cash flow, right? Because they're getting the pension. But then they do it. So these are the nuances. This is where smart people in government, much smarter than me, really need to be thinking it. You got to think about incentivizing people. So like the proceeds of the sale of a family home, they could go, we'll contain that and go, don't worry, we'll still give you a pension, invest that, and maybe you can have a better quality of life, right?
100%.
And I know a lot of people on the pension, like the pension is just enough. Just enough. Then they go, oh, what about your superannuation? But they hit superannuation, they just continue to hit it. So there are ways around this. This is where the policy sensibility should take place. Just tinkering around these type of things. You want liquidity in properties. Do you want to sell? Like, do you want to sell more properties? Like, do you want to raise more money? You get all of the. I'll tell you what. You get all these retirees, baby boomers, to get out of their big family home so they can make it available for a upcoming family. They might not get the stamp duty on the sale of the new property by the retiree, but I tell you what, that's a big fat purchase price for the new person coming into who will be paying stamp duty. So just by doing that alone, you probably ameliorate or remedy some of the losses you might get by doing it, and you're creating more supply. So this is anyway. It's a bit outside the scope of this.
I think they call it the home deficit, the bedroom deficit.
Like these things. Like supply just isn't building more stuff is a big part of it. It's about liquidity in the market.
Actually, and I want to give a shout out to one of our buyers agents, Paul Mollica, because he said he raised one really, really good point in terms of the supply debate, which you and I have never spoken about before. But he raised a very good point, which is people with supply and demand, they make it a very simplistic diagram of this is how many people are coming into Australia, this is how many people are, how many homes are being built, how many bedrooms are being built, and then you fall on the supply-demand curve. He said what that also does is it fails to bake in things like separations, where for whatever reason you have a divorce, families move their separate ways, and suddenly a family which required one dwelling now requires two. And there are hundreds of thousands of people that are doing that every year. It's very unfortunate, but that has to be baked into the increased supply. And it's not. So if we're already in disequilibrium, you add in those small things here and there, it does show how out of kilter it all is.
These are all the nuances, right, which need to be looked at. We have a massive public service. They should be able to look at these type of issues, right? But they don't, unfortunately. And how this manifests is that, people end up without houses, people living in their cars, like all this stuff largely. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can be done.
It can be,
If we have bold, courageous leaders who they talk about generational equity, they talk about generational tax reform, okay. Let's see how you go, mate, on Tuesday. I don't know. It's going to be so. But what I would say is, and whether or not people like these conversations. They want us to sort of muse about these things. That's cool. I spoke to a buyer's agent, and this is about property buzz, what we're seeing on the street, and as two reasonably connected people in and around property.
Mm-hmm.
One buyer's agent I spoke to said he's had his biggest month ever.
Really?
And this is a buyer's agent that people would know.
Yeah.
He's going, we haven't seen interest like this. But
yeah.
back to your point,
People ain't going nowhere.
This noise around it all. There are people who are sitting on their hands,
So
but
there was
there are
a
people
point
who are
there,
going.
Phil, there was a point there where I was talking to my wife.
You actually talk.
Yeah,
I
we
thought
do.
you just watch Married at First Sight.
Yeah, we do. We do that a lot. We do that very
Okay.
frequently.
Yeah.
Plus the behind the
Well,
scenes.
pass on my regards.
I will.
Does she tune into this?
She does actually. Yeah,
hello.
she does.
There you go.
So we were talking about, okay, well, if they're going to really smash the property market, perhaps we should start diversifying a bit more, going into equities.
Yeah.
And then the government starts musing with stopping capital gains discount on equities
they're gonna do that as well.
So there's a few points here. When you're talking about a strong market,
Yep.
so the government's shown that something about intergenerational equity, blah, 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 tink with tax on houses. And then they've now extrapolated that to most tradable assets as well. So equities. How many people who would be having money in equities that thought it was something they're familiar with, something that they know, that are now going to be slammed with capital gain tax on that would now look to property and say, well, at least I get bricks and mortar, which is what we talk about at the end of the day. How many more people might actually turn from other tradable assets into property because
leverage?
Because you could get something from it, right? And the data from this month, Phil, is investor borrowing surges, which is actually reflecting a bit of confidence. So there has been a rise in investor lending over the last month, despite borrowing cost, despite issues with tax changes, which people have suggested. Well, people are just trying to bring forward their purchases. People are trying to rush into some
You
purchases.
saw APRA came out of the blocks last year trying to put brakes on investment lending and capping DTI loans and the debt to income to 6 and all that sort of stuff.
I thought that was such a big thing at the time, and everyone's forgotten about it. Shows it doesn't even matter.
Well, the DTI regime doesn't relate to new build properties.
Oh, well, there we go.
So this is the hot tip, right?
Yep.
And we'll see what happens on Tuesday. But I think you might just get people shuffling the decks on the type of investment properties they're buying because DTI lending doesn't, from what I believe, speaking to brokers, doesn't has less consequence with new builds.
Yep.
And if the government is incentivizing people towards new build properties in order to increase supply, you're going to get a change of things. So there's going to be a theme, certainly a theme for us moving forward. But yeah, this buyer's agent said, hey, it's busy. It's busy out there. And I think, to the point, we'll conclude with this, and who knows, it'll probably get
Well, we still have our
completely
video.
wrong. I know.
Yeah.
On this is that there will be an element of grandfathering. And I think what will happen, there'll be a moment in time where they say, this is the date when it changes. Previous to that, all that capital will be at 50%. And then from that. So the value is going to win on this because everyone's going to forget their property's valued at a moment in time, right? Yeah. To say this is what the value would have been on the 10th of April or whatever the date is.
And
right?
if they're going to move everyone from, this is not financial advice.
No,
this is merely what I read online.
Is,
Given that the theory at the moment is that everyone, even grandfathered quote unquote properties, will be transitioned to indexation. Given the theory, we'll find out next week, that there is inherently an incentive for you to overvalue properties.
Of course. Yeah, well, maybe.
To bake in as much of the 50% deposit.
Yeah, to pay it forward and then just go whatever.
Yeah.
There'll be a bit of that. Two other things also before we get the video that I saw this week, one thing in particular. As part of this musing around it, there was a story that said they may ban, I don't think they will, but they may ban borrowing for property inside of super funds.
Really?
Yeah. And this was
I did not see
this was a recommendation out of the Grattan Institute. And Grattan Institute is a left wing research, very left wing.
Yeah.
So pretty much saying that's not the spirit of superannuation. Superannuation is about building slow, long term growth. So borrowing in super funds for property, limited recourse borrowing, so contained to the property itself. I can't remember exactly, but there was a quote about it turbocharges these things and therefore makes the wealthy even wealthier because they're using property to get ahead in the super funds. So it's okay for institutions to make investments and borrow against it to deliver on it, which is what super funds do.
Yeah.
But not for the individual.
I mean,
Again, this is a divisive thing, right? It's like it's two speeds. It's like instos can do all this stuff and do it, but individuals no.
Yeah.
Because it's an individual thing. That's an individual getting wealthy rather than a corporation getting wealthy.
Well, I mean, on the flip side, what? And look, I don't know anyone in this position, but what if you've been in a public service job? And I don't mean the people behind a desk in a camera, the people that you and I have been flogging. What if you're one of those public servants that you're one of the good guys? You're a teacher, you're a nurse, you're a cop. You're out there every day. You're putting your body on the line. You're probably not getting paid as much as you should because you are really the backbone of this country. You look after people. You don't get paid as much as you should, but your super's not bad. Your super, some of the that can be 18, 20%, right? Which is good for them.
Yeah.
What if they looked at it and said, hey, I've been in this job for decades. It's kind of gone past my ability to buy a house now, but I've got a couple of $100,000 in super.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm going to put that into a unit and it won't necessarily break the bank because I've got 10, 15 years to go and I can start topping it up now, but I know it'll be paid off by then, so I'll have security of a place once I retire. What about them? They're just looking after security in the end.
Don't know, mate.
Yep. Anyway,
reaction video.
We'll get to
Use your machine.
Okay, let's see if this works. Did it work? There we go. Okay, fantastic.
Here we go.
Now I've got... Do you want me to do it again?
Can I look at it on that thing?
Do you want to look at it on the tablet?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
There you go. And you need to use the
Sorry,
pen.
everyone. If you can watch this again. What do I just press it?
So you can press the thing.
Okay,
or you
bring it back.
Press the play.
Here we go, everyone. Who is it?
That's a buyer's agent.
I
get it.
Why are they drinking a cup of tea?
Phil, I suddenly, after watching this Instagram reel, I've got to pick my words very carefully. I kind of get now why property investors are being taxed. Now this is an Instagram reel that came up on my Instagram feed, Phil, and I thought that the combination of thought it was an interesting combination of emotions. So despite what goes on in the world, Phil, Phil.
Our viewers can see this now.
Yeah, our viewers can see this.
Yeah.
Despite what goes on in the world, Phil, one thing's for certain, the Australian property market's always going to go up.
But what is this? Can you go all the way to the end again? Noise changes every day. The long game, what?
The long game never does.
What is the long game?
Australian property.
But how do you know that? Like, it looks like the long game is Apple thingy-majiggers and a cup of tea or somewhere or other.
So,
I don't want to be like, is this a buyer's agent business?
Yeah.
Can you show me? Oh, yeah.
Well, but there's more.
Okay.
So, Phil, the background of this is, despite everything that goes on in the world, this is.
So what? Okay, let's just pull it. I can't really. So this is everything that's going on in the world, right? Okay, let's go through them. What's the first one?
The Paris terrorist attacks.
Okay,
so I'm guessing that's
one?
the Bataclan.
Yeah.
Brexit.
Yep.
The Banking Royal Commission.
Okay.
The US-China trade war.
Which one?
I think the OG Trump one.
Okay.
COVID-19, COVID-19 Part 2.
Yeah.
Vaccine rollouts and lockdowns.
Yeah.
Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
The Israel-Hamas war.
Yeah.
The global interest rate peak, economic uncertainty, and fuel crisis and war.
Okay. They're quite disparate.
So, Phil, I was looking at this and it came up on my Instagram feed and I did a bit of deep dive and there was actually a few of these. And I thought that it was quite interesting for someone looking to promote their buyer's agency business that they should immediately follow what was real life-changing events that has led, Paris, the murder of 100 innocent people, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, two nations where hundreds of thousands have died on each side, young men thrown to the front lines, thrown in front of bullets, thrown in front of missiles and drones, where drones
World War One war that. Like
it is a proper World War One war.
War of attrition.
It is trench wars where you go over the top and you get mowed down.
Yep.
Israel and Hamas, and we know everything that's happened there. That's sucked in about 4 or 5 countries now. A lot of people have died. All the small businesses that have lost. And here we go. The crux of it is that no matter what happens, the long game never changes in Australian property filled with a smile. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting because one of the big challenges, Phil, that this sector faces is there's a meme going around online, which is, hey, something crazy is happening overseas, and here's what it means for Australian property. And we dived into the meme.
We did, didn't we?
We dived into the meme, and for something that, for a few examples there with war overseas and how this has just cruelly changed the lives of millions of people. But let's make it about buying Australian property and getting rich. And when I see stuff like that, Phil, I kind of get why we're getting taxed now.
But I don't know if this person is a buyer's agent or it's someone who is a social media. I don't know. I don't know the company. I'm sure whoever this company is a buyer's agent is trying to start a business and do well. Great. I'm talking about aspiration. Good on them.
Yeah.
Aspiration's cool, right? But property investment it's become an internet meme. It's become an internet meme, and it's just not punters scrolling for their phones who are seeing this stuff. I'll tell you who are also looking at it. ASIC.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Regulators. APRA.
Yeah.
Bank executives. We saw Macquarie Bank come out 6 months ago maybe and said we're restricting trust-based lending. And one of the reasons why is because of the proliferation of internet influencers promoting
Instagram
trust-based
influencers.
structures to mitigate serviceability things like, it's and I've been talking about this for a long time now, is that people think being a buyer's agent is posting things on social media in order to find clients to get them properties that they source. That's not being a buyer's agent.
Hey, what's going to happen, before I forget this line of thought, what's going to happen to those people that, with buyer's agent financial advice, right? With buyer's agent financial advice, what's going to happen to all of those people that have stripped so much equity out of their properties? And you and I last week spoke about the risk of equity stripping in a volatile environment or an environment that stops growing. What's going to happen to all those people that stripped so much now that they've got so little buffer in areas, hotspots, our promised hotspots, and our promised financial advice, and it stops growing and they haven't necessarily baked in enough fat for more tax?
It's going to happen. I'm not going to say everywhere, but there's going to be certainly certain markets where you've had a oversubscribed involvement of buyers agents in those markets, putting people into those markets which may be lower income earners who are sort of on this redlining pathway to follow the dream. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be sitting there going, I don't know if I can hold on to these properties anymore.
Yeah.
Particularly with interest rates rising. And a lot of this is going to come back to bite a lot of buyers agents. And one of the biggest concerns I have right now is buyers agents, some buyers agents online, and I'm hugely of the position that you play the ball and not the man. And just that reaction video, I've no idea who that business is. So putting that aside, I'm talking about the concept rather than the people. The same applies in this particular comment. There are buyers agents out there guaranteeing with their own money that if their clients don't get the capital growth that they've promised them at the point of sale, that they will cover the difference.
Everyone knows who you're talking about.
No, there's many of them, right? And I'm talking about basic stuff. I'm not talking about more sophisticated strategies with building and all that. So I'm just saying, hey, we know this market so well that we're going to buy because of the I'm talking about people promoting this notion that the market is going to do the lifting on the growth, and we guarantee it for you, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's quite easy to guarantee that stuff if you and or a number of buyers agents, I'm not saying that there's any sort of in cahoots here, are working on a particular market. If you bought early in that market and there's been buyers agent frenzy in there that's driven the price up,
hallelujah,
there's probably a good chance they're going to be able to guarantee that growth. But the musical chairs will stop at some point, and there'll be no seat for many people to sit. So we're going to see that take place. Now that will happen organically, just because the market will do that, and you'll see a big change in the buyers agent space. What will happen in parallel with that, but maybe not instantly, is the greater government oversight regulating this particular part of the sector. You see that's already having a crack at financial influencers, all this sort of. So I'd caution everyone to be very, very careful. Yeah, we're not financial influencers. We're not providing any advice. We're not providing any service. We're just two blokes having a yarn about property, right? But there are people out there who are advising people to spend their money to do things that might be okay when the sun is shining, and everyone knows the Buffett quote about when the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. Right? It's going to happen, right? It's going to happen,
especially if you're in a low yielding market. I mean the era of getting your 6-7% yielding resi assets gone. Unless you're buying units, which might be the next.
I know people getting used. I know people
they're
buying
doing a very good job.
Yeah,
they're doing a very good job with that. And
by the way, buy something for cash. They're going to yield really well. Buy something at a 10% LVR.
Yeah.
Going to have great yields.
But following the financial advice of tear as much equity from it as you can, so you can come back to us again. Because they want your repeat fee, right? They want your buyer's agent fee Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. And there's going to be a lot of people out there.
A bit cynical there. I know a lot of bays that don't operate like
this.
No,
of course. I'm being cynical. But also, you and I are targeting. Not targeting. You and I are speaking to people that are offering financial advice potentially to the detriment of the average working class Australian.
Yeah.
Because they would say, rip all the equity out. And then what happens after 5 interest rate rises and you're holding debt which you were never actually able to service? And you're in a lower yielding suburb already, because we've had this, and this might sound cynical, but a scramble to the bottom. What I mean by that is those higher yielding suburbs for established homes with 6-7% yields, they were identified years ago. People bought them into them years ago. You're for an entry level, your more bread and butter foundational house, established home, you're probably not going to be getting over the mid-4s unless you're buying super regional. I'm not convinced that a lot of new investors would necessarily be able to weather a sum total of 6 interest rate rises. Now, Westpac has already forecasted, I think, 2 or 3 more.
I think they did prior to this one,
Yeah, because I think it was 4 including this one. And obviously we're not talking about anyone in particular, but my concern is maybe for those working class Australians that stumbled across an Instagram reel. They saw the Instagram reel, they saw it as a get-rich-quick scheme. They were sold a world by a buyer's agent. They were referred a broker who made it happen. And they might be in. They might be in for a pain. Which is where your ASICs come in.
I know, and I don't want to give too much away. I know you're working on a story right now. The buyer's agent space is attracting a lot of people to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Who see
interesting characters.
And interesting characters who have been sold this idea by certain cohorts that here's a place, you just find properties, you get a huge commission, job done. What a lot of maybe investors don't understand or appreciate is that buyer's agents actually need to be licensed.
You need a real estate license.
You need a real estate license.
Yep.
So there is not a lot, there are some buyer's agents out there who are providing these recommendations and services and take a fee for it, who are unlicensed, right? That's one side. You scratch the surface a little bit more and look at character and history, you start to see a pretty murky element a pretty murky element of this thing. So be very, very conscious about who you're taking your advice from.
Yeah. Well,
And I know you're working on something.
No, and we won't give too much more.
Yeah.
But and this has got nothing to do with what we're working on.
Yeah.
What I'm about to say has got nothing to do with what we're working on. But yeah, especially when people are flogging house and land packages and they're getting a sales commission on the other side as well.
Disclose it, mate. You know, you just want people to be fair, reasonable. But properties is not a new thing. Properties always attracted very capable professionals. It's also attracted fringes.
Yeah.
Right? So it's up to you. You're in charge. You hold the purse strings. Spend your money right.
Yeah.
But yeah. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. I don't know, mate. So Tuesday, budget.
It's the day. I'm just trying to check if we've got anything else. Victoria extending stamp duty relief in bid stabilised housing. Yeah, all the same. I had a chat with Josh Altman. A lot of our listeners will probably know Josh.
Who is Josh Altman?
From $1 Million Listings.
Oh, yeah. The
$1 Million Listing star from LA, Josh Altman. So we had a bit of a
Why
chat.
don't you get a job on $1 Million Listings in? When's the next instalment of the Australian one? Is that happening?
Oh yeah, true. I don't know.
What's $1 million?
Do you reckon I could do it? Do you reckon? I don't know if I'm personable enough.
You need to be dramatic.
I'm pretty dramatic.
Can be
I
dramatic.
could probably do the drama. I don't know. I'd probably.
You got to go to a lot of cocktail parties and
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that.
can't wear socks.
I would be can't wear socks.
Can't
no,
wear
that's
socks.
ridiculous.
No.
I'd be walking through a house and then I'd probably I'd be trying to sell it and then I'd start talking about, well, not sure if you could afford this given all the bad work the government's doing with inflation, serviceability shot. No one will be able to afford this place. I probably wouldn't work.
Yeah.
I focus too much on the
You're a nosy journalist. Get
opinionated,
out of the way.
maybe opinionated.
Not allowed to be opinionated.
Yeah, no, you're not
You
allowed.
can do on these things, though, on these Property Buzz.
I think I'm just made to be a property podcaster.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's probably
knows?
the vibe. Yeah.
Well, every man and his dog wants to be a property podcaster these days.
There's one or two of them going around.
It's a few. There is a few. But on that note, please help us out. I don't ask for a lot. But wherever you're tuning into this, please, reviews, 5 stars, whether you're on the YouTube or streaming platforms or elsewhere. We get a real kick out of it. It helps us. Hugely popular, by the way, what we're doing. But we want to keep growing and evolving it. So please do whatever you can to like us and follow us and tell your friends about us and let us know what else you want us to go. We've been a bit light on the comments and stuff. We'll get into that a lot more into the future as well. But thank you, Lee, for your time today. All very good.
Thank you, Phil.
And we'll be in touch with what we're going to do around the budget and how we're going to give some sense to it all, because it'll all come downstream. And it'll be fun and games next week, so I look forward to it. So thanks, everyone. It's good to see you all on this Friday morning. And if you're tuning on to this via podcast, out and about looking at property, keep your nose. There's some good buying out there right now. People I know are doing some good stuff. So get out there, get stuck in, know your numbers, have your finance sorted out, all that good stuff, and you'll be sweet. So this is Property Buzz. You go to propertybuzz.com.au. There's also a daily newsletter to keep you connected with everything as well. Go and check that out. We'll see you next week for the budget wrap-up for Property Buzz, but we may see you before that as well. So until then, bye-bye.